Hello. My crazy future mother-in-law tossed my engagement ring down the drain and then tried to attack me, getting herself arrested. My fiancée GC is begging me not to press charges. The day I met Andy's mom, she was unbelievably rude, fat-shaming me even though I'm of a normal weight, and insulting me until I cried. I left their house, but Andy stayed behind. He texted me, apologized for his mother's behavior, and told me what happened after I left. He said he went off on her, calling her a stuck-up, self-serving woman who'd rather tear down the woman he loves than support her. He told her she had one more chance, and if she didn't change, he'd cut contact. This gave me some hope, so I decided to give our relationship another try. 2 weeks later, Andy invited me to a family birthday party. There, I'd meet his mom again, as well as his sisters and grandparents. His sisters and grandparents were lovely, asking about my job, family, and friends. His mom avoided me all evening, which I was fine with. Later, I noticed my purse was missing. Andy helped me search for it, then hurried upstairs. I heard yelling before he came back with my purse. He told me his mom had taken it to check my driver's license and run a background check. He thought she was joking earlier when she mentioned it. After that, I avoided his family events. Eventually, Andy asked me to come to a family reunion. I reluctantly agreed, thinking his mom wouldn't cause trouble with so many people around. Everything was going great until she sat at my table. The conversation was pleasant until I showed a picture of my niece to his sister. His mom saw it and laughed, saying she hoped any kids I had with Andy wouldn't look like my niece. I snapped, yelling at her, calling her the most evil person I'd ever met. She played the victim, claiming I misunderstood her joke. Andy told her to stop making a fool of herself, but she lunged at him, grabbed a small box he was holding, and ran outside. She threw it down a storm drain. It was his grandmother's ring, meant for his proposal. We couldn't find the ring. The city tried to help, but it was gone. Andy's family was devastated, some even cutting contact with her. His sisters still spoke to her, and she played the victim, claiming a mental break. I believe she hid the ring and threw only the box. Despite this, Andy proposed with a different ring, and I said yes. His mom found out and locked herself in her room for 3 days. Then I started getting strange calls and emails. I found Craigslist ads with my phone number, likely posted by his mom. Andy didn't think she was tech-savvy enough, but his older sister might be helping. One day, his mom showed up at our door, apologizing and wanting a fresh start. I let her in, but she saw my Christmas tree and went berserk, calling me a heretic and destroying ornaments. I dragged her out and called the police. She tried to play the victim again but was arrested. Andy's family pressured me to drop charges, but I didn't feel safe. This caused tension in our relationship. After the attack, I stayed with my parents. My mom was furious and supportive, even confronting his mom, which led to a physical altercation. Eventually, I left Andy, heartbroken. A few days later, I found out I was pregnant. When I went to tell Andy, his mom was there and he sided with her. She demanded I get a termination. I refused and barely escaped. Now I'm unsure what to do next. I remember the first day I met Andy's mom, Carol. It was a beautiful sunny afternoon, and Andy had decided it was time for me to meet his family. I was nervous but excited. We had been dating for almost a year, and I was deeply in love with him. I hoped his family would like me, and I especially wanted to make a good impression on his mom. Little did I know that this meeting would be the start of a nightmare. When we arrived at their house, Carol greeted us at the door. She looked me up and down, her eyes full of judgment. "So this is the girl you've been talking about, Andy?" she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I smiled nervously and extended my hand. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Johnson," I said. She ignored my hand and turned to Andy. "Why didn't you tell me she was so plump?" she said loudly enough for me to hear. I felt my face turn red with embarrassment. Andy immediately defended me, saying, "Mom, that's enough. She's perfect the way she is." Throughout the evening, Carol continued to make snide comments about my weight, my clothes, and even my job. I tried to brush it off, but it was clear she was determined to make me feel unwelcome. By the time dinner was over, I was in tears. I couldn't take it anymore and excused myself. Andy followed me outside and apologized profusely. He promised me he would talk to his mom and make sure she never treated me that way again. 2 weeks later, Andy invited me to his cousin's birthday party. I was hesitant to go, but Andy assured me that his mom would be on her best behavior. When we arrived, I was introduced to his sisters, Sarah and Lisa, and his grandparents, George and Betty. They were all very kind and welcoming. I started to feel more comfortable and began to enjoy myself. Carol, on the other hand, kept her distance. I was relieved but also suspicious of her sudden change in behavior. As the evening went on, I realized my purse was missing. I had left it on the kitchen counter, but it was nowhere to be found. Andy and I searched the entire house, but it was gone. Suddenly, Andy's face turned pale. He ran upstairs and I heard shouting. A few minutes later, he came back down holding my purse. He explained that his mom had taken it to check my driver's license and run a background check on me. I was furious and demanded to leave immediately. On the way home, Andy apologized again and promised me that he would handle it. Despite his reassurances, I started to have doubts about our relationship. It seemed like Andy's words and actions didn't match up. He said he wouldn't tolerate his mom's behavior, but he didn't seem to be doing much to stop it. I decided to keep a close eye on the situation. A month later, Andy asked me to accompany him to his family's annual reunion. I was reluctant, but he convinced me by saying that there would be plenty of people around, and his mom wouldn't dare cause a scene. I agreed to go, hoping for the best. At first, everything seemed fine. I met more of his extended family and caught up with his sisters. But then Carol joined our table. The conversation started off pleasant enough. We talked about our jobs, hobbies, and future plans. I even showed Sarah a picture of my niece on my phone. Carol glanced at the screen and burst out laughing. "I hope if you and Andy ever have kids, they don't look like that," she said. I was stunned. That was the last straw. I stood up and unleashed all the pent-up anger and frustration. "You are the most hateful person I've ever met," I shouted. "If I ever have kids with Andy, you will never meet them." Andy rushed over, and Carol threw herself into his arms, sobbing and claiming I had misunderstood her joke. Andy told her to stop making a scene and to sit down. But then she noticed the small box Andy was holding and lost it. She grabbed the box and ran outside, screaming that I would never have the ring. She threw it down a storm drain. It was his grandmother's ring, meant for our engagement. I was heartbroken. The next day, we tried to retrieve the ring with the help of the city, but it was gone. Andy's family was devastated. His grandmother especially was heartbroken. The ring had been in the family for generations. Some family members cut ties with Carol, while others believed her story of a mental breakdown. I was convinced she had hidden the ring and thrown only the box, but I had no proof. Despite everything, Andy proposed with a different ring, and I accepted. We were happy, but the drama was far from over. Carol found out about our engagement and locked herself in her room for days. Then, I started receiving strange calls and emails. I found Craigslist ads with my number, describing me and my red hair. I suspected Carol, but Andy didn't think she was capable. He mentioned his older sister, Beth, might be involved. One day, Carol showed up at our door, apologizing and asking for a fresh start. I let her in, hoping to resolve things. But when she saw our Christmas tree, she went berserk, calling me a heretic and destroying the ornaments. I dragged her out and called the police. She tried to play the victim again, but they arrested her. Andy's family pressured me to drop the charges, but I refused. This caused a strain in our relationship. After the attack, I stayed with my parents. My mom was furious and supportive. She even confronted Carol, leading to a physical altercation. Eventually, I left Andy, heartbroken. A few days later, I found out I was pregnant. When I went to tell Andy, Carol was there and he sided with her. She demanded I get a termination. I refused and barely escaped. Now I'm unsure what to do next. Bye-bye.